It was 2014, and Valentine's Day was approaching. Like most years, I was single, which was normally fine by me most of the time. However, that year had been a particularly lonely one, with all of my friends at college and me just trying to find my place in the world and what I wanted to do with myself. So reluctantly, I decided to download a few of those dating apps and see if I could meet someone in my area with whom I might have something in common. After a few days, I had gotten a few matches, and one of the girls I was talking to seemed really cool. We shared a lot of the same interests, including our taste in music, and we both liked the same movies, so I figured I would ask her if she might want to see a movie on Valentine's Day, and it would turn out that she wasn't busy and she said she would love to. To be honest, this was my first supposedly real date on Valentine's Day, so I was pretty nervous, especially since I hadn't actually met this girl before. But we agreed to go and see the Lego movie, so I figured that it would at least be an enjoyable movie, even if the date turned sour. And on Valentine's Day, we both were messaging back and forth trying to figure out when and where we wanted to meet. We eventually decided to meet in the parking lot outside of the Target that was attached to the mall that the theater was in. We also agreed to have dinner after the movie, so I let her know that I needed to stop by the bank on the way to the mall and grab some cash just in case we needed it for some reason. She said that was fine and told me that she would be in a blue Toyota Camry near the far end of the parking lot and to look for the car when I got there. After stopping by the bank, I headed over to the Target parking lot and began scanning around for the blue Camry, and it wasn't hard to find. It was sitting at the very end of the parking lot with only 2 cars near it. As I got closer though, I saw that it was empty. Regardless, I pulled up beside it and put my car in park. I took my phone to send her a message asking her where she was, but before I could hit send, my passenger side door swung open and a grown man took a seat next to me. I turned to ask him what he was doing, but then I noticed the gun in his hand. He told me not to make any moves and to just pull out of the parking spot nice and slowly. There was nothing for me to do other than to listen to the man's instructions. As we drove along, he had me turn down back roads, and eventually he told me to stop and pull up on the side of the road. I was concerned because of the lack of anything around us. It was only trees. I had yet to see a building on this stretch of the road. Nevertheless, I did what he said and pulled the car over. I told him that he could take whatever he wanted, and I asked him just to please not hurt me. That was when he laughed and told me that I was the 4th sucker, as he called it, to be scammed by his fake Tinder profile. He then told me that he wanted my wallet, sneakers, and cell phone, and as he drove off in my car, I told myself that I was lucky to be alive. I told the police about the profile he had used, and they said he had used 3 other very similar profiles to rob other men in the area. They said they were close to catching him, but I haven't heard anything about it since. And that was 8 years ago. When I was living in San Diego with a few friends, we all decided to go out to a speed dating event that was hosted monthly at one of the restaurants and bars that we like to go to, and it ended up being a ton of fun. We ended up meeting some really cool people, and it was a good way to get to know some things about the area from people who had been there a while. So as Valentine's Day was coming up, Sarah, one of my roommates, saw a flyer at the restaurant that they were doing a Valentine's speed dating event. Right away, Sarah, Josh, Katie, and I were all on board. The only person who didn't want any part of it was Justin, but that's because he had a real date to go on that year. But for the 4 of us, we were going to try to make the best of the day. We got to the restaurant early, filled out all the information and questionnaire that they handed out, and got our name tags before sitting at random tables. And just as we expected, it was a great time, at least for the few first rounds. However, when Katie and I ended up being paired with one another, things changed a bit. Katie seemed a little weird when she sat down, and when I asked her what was wrong, she told me that the last guy she had been paired with kept trying to touch her hands and reaching across the table. She said that he gave her really creepy vibes and just couldn't shake it. I did my best to help her calm down before we ended up switching partners again, and I think I did. But for the rest of the night, I couldn't help but watch the guy that she had gotten so scared of. Right away, I noticed what she was talking about. Almost everyone that he got paired with seemed to come out of the conversation looking like they had just had a near-death experience. They looked so creeped out. However, when the time came for the man to be paired up with my other roommate, Sarah, I noticed something odd. She seemed to be enjoying herself around him. In fact, after the event was over, she told us that she was going to go back to watch a movie at his apartment, to which we all protested. She reminded us that she was an adult though, and said that she was going to hang out for a few hours and then catch a ride home. Reluctantly, we all let her go off with him. Sarah never returned home that night, and the next day we got a visit from the police. A worker at the restaurant we were at that night was throwing out the trash and found Sarah's body tucked behind the dumpster. She had been stabbed in the stomach more than 10 times, and the examiners told her family that there were signs that she had been assaulted beforehand. We pointed the police toward the man that we all know was responsible, but according to them, there wasn't enough evidence to directly implicate him. Cameras in the restaurant saw her leaving with him, but that was it. When they searched his apartment, they found no sign of Sarah having been there. He claims that when they left the restaurant, she began mocking him at the sight of his beat-up car, to which he told her that he didn't want to see her anymore and left her there. We don't buy that at all, though. Sarah's car was a junker too. She wouldn't have any problems with what anyone else drove. As of right now, Sarah's killer is still out there. Valentine's Day came, so my fiancée Tara and I decided to go see a movie and grab something to eat. It was a late movie, so by the time we had gotten out of the theater, it was already around 10 p.m. Both of us were exhausted after working all day, so the plan was just to get into the car and head home, which we did. However, as soon as I stepped into our apartment, I noticed something strange. The light had been left on in the bathroom, which is something we never did. You see, we had a huge window taking up a large portion of our bathroom wall, so during the daytime, it was so bright in there, we often never used the light. And when we were in the apartment earlier that day, we wouldn't have had the light on. But I just figured we must have accidentally turned it on or something, as odd as that sounds. I figured it was nothing, so I didn't even bring it up to Tara. We were both too tired to deal with it anyways, so we just got into our pajamas and got ready to fall asleep after an otherwise perfect Valentine's Day. Sadly, the sleep didn't last long. Not long after I had managed to drift off, I was shaken awake by Tara. I turned to her and she had her finger to her lips telling me to stay quiet. After that, she held up her phone on which she had typed, "I hear something under the bed." I remember rolling my eyes because this was something that had happened before, and it turned out to be one of the cats. This time was different though, because the cats were in the living room. I remember them not wanting to come into the room before I closed the door for the night, so I decided to turn on the flashlight on Tara's phone and take a look to see what might be making this noise that she claimed to hear. I shined the phone light down the crack of the bed along the wall and peered down in the crevice. I had to do my best to not drop the phone, because as soon as my eyes adjusted, I noticed that there was an eye looking right back up at me. I rolled as fast as I could and grabbed Tara, ushering her to the door quickly. Once we were out of my room, we went into the bathroom and proceeded to lock and barricade the door. Tara, who had her phone, was calling the police as we heard the sounds of footsteps running through the room and into the hallway. The door handle to the bathroom began to move and I could hear whoever it was trying to force the door open. That was when I yelled for them to get out of here and told them that we were calling the police. They must have taken me seriously because shortly after, I heard footsteps run through our apartment and out of the front door. By the time the police arrived, there was no sign of the intruder. All they found was one of our kitchen knives stashed underneath our bed. The next day, we got a new set of locks on the door and cameras in case anything like that ever happened again.